Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us for the Vice President of Student Services Forums for San Diego City College. My name is Genevieve Esquera, the Associate Dean of Outreach and Community Relations here at City College, and I'll be moderating the forums today. We are delighted to have Mr. Marciano Perez join us today for this Vice President of Student Services Public Forum. Before we begin, let me take a moment to review the ground rules for the forum. Each candidate will have 45 minutes for their forum, and the time will start when they begin their opening remarks. Each candidate will provide brief opening remarks of up to 5 minutes, and we have solicited feedback from our college community and have received a variety of questions in advance of today's forum. Of these questions, 6 were selected to ask of each candidate. We will not be taking questions during the forum. All questions must have been submitted prior to today. We will provide a timing cue at the 20-minute mark, and 5 minutes before the end of the session, we will ask the candidate to provide brief closing remarks. Your feedback is important. To submit your feedback for Mr. Marciano Perez, please go to the link displayed on the screen. And we will display the link on the screen. Perfect, thank you. The feedback form will be open until 3 p.m. today, so please complete the brief survey right away. Again, the survey will close today at 3 p.m. We thank you all for joining us, and let us begin. Our first candidate is Mr. Marciano Perez, Acting Vice President of Student Services at San Diego City College. Mr. Perez, it is our pleasure to invite you to provide a brief opening statement.
Thank you, Genevieve, for allowing me the opportunity to be here. And thank you all for giving me this amazing opportunity to be able to interview for the Vice President of Student Services position here at San Diego City College. Again, I'm Marciano Perez. I am currently serving as the Acting Vice President of Student Services here at San Diego City. And when I was not the Acting Vice President, I was serving as the Dean of Student Affairs here at City. I joined the City College family in January of 2016. I made the journey from the 4-year UC system and joined San Diego City College. Tell you a little bit about my background. I'm a first-generation college graduate. Was born and raised in Gary, Indiana, to my Puerto Rican parents who came to Indiana from Puerto Rico to work in. My dad wanted to work in the mills that were available. That's where a lot of the jobs were. So Gary is a big steel city, and there were a lot of opportunities for factories and manufacturing. And so my parents came there to look for opportunities. I was raised in Gary. I'm a product of the public school system there. After graduating from high school, I went to a small liberal arts private college in Ohio called Denison University. It was my first real experience of beginning to understand who I was in the context of how people saw me. And it was quite eye-opening coming from Gary, Indiana to Denison University in Granville, Ohio. After graduating from Denison with a bachelor's degree in Spanish literature, I decided that I wanted to teach. I wanted to work in a high school setting. And I took a job working as a counselor at a residential high school for students gifted in math, science, and humanities. And I worked working as a counselor and teaching part-time for about 5 years, and then decided that I really wanted to work with college students again, and decided that I was going to go back and work on my master's. I went to Ball State University in Muncie, Indiana, and got my master's in higher education administration from Ball State. I had a wonderful experience there. Again, learned a lot about who I was as a young professional, and then took a job at UC Davis, working in residential education. After working at UC Davis for a couple of years, I had the great opportunity to take a job at UC San Diego as an assistant resident dean for Thurgood Marshall College, where I worked there for a couple of years before being given the opportunity to really, there was a brand new college that had opened. called Six College. The college hadn't been named yet. It still hasn't been named, but I had the opportunity to come over as the resident dean, associate dean of students and director of residence life, where I worked there up until the time I came here to City. As I mentioned, I helped establish a new college at UCSD, and one of the reasons that I started looking for opportunities outside of UCSD was really I wanted to continue my passion for social justice, equity, and inclusion, and what better place to do that than San Diego City College, the college that's committed to social justice. We talk about it, we do it. It's something that we put into practice every single day in terms of access. And so I have been here at City for the last almost 6 years now, and have enjoyed every single bit of this ride being at San Diego City. So that's a little bit about who I am, and I'm sure you'll get to know a little bit more about me through the questions.
Thank you, Mr. Perez. We will now move on to the questions. So your first question, what do you believe are the most critical issues community colleges will face in the next 2 to 3 years?
Yeah, I think the way that we're going about serving students is changing. We've seen enrollment has dropped in community colleges up and down the state, and really across the country. But California has definitely felt its fair share of that. And so we've got an enrollment issue that we need to address. And with enrollment comes, we need to think about not just enrollment, but retention and how those things work together. When we think about who our students are, one of the things that we've learned is that our students have often struggled with basic needs. And there has been, this campus has a tremendous amount of students that have struggled with meeting basic needs. And so that's something that we're starting to see when you look at the HOPE survey, the results. Basic needs for college students is something that continues to be an issue across the country, where students are struggling with being able to pay rent, and students struggling with food insecurity, access to health. So all of those are critically important things that are impacting our students. And I think the third thing is related to how we're delivering services. I think we've learned a lot during this pandemic about how we can serve students. We've learned a lot about flexibility, and we've learned a lot about how to shift in the way that we're delivering our services to students. And so I think that the needs that students had maybe presented at one time, and how we thought we were best poised to serve those has changed. Our student demographic have changed. And so I think those are probably three of the greatest things that are facing at this time.
Thank you. Your next question. Mental health issues are growing at a tremendous pace locally, statewide, and nationally. How do we as a community college keep pace with this growth while ensuring students, faculty, and staff have the mental health resources that they need?
As one of the things that I'm incredibly proud of is that we have a tremendous mental health team here at City College that's poised to really help our students. In my role as Dean of Student Affairs and as Acting Vice President, I get to interact with our team to talk about students of concern with faculty on a regular basis. I got to lead our college's collaborative care team for a while with our Director of Mental Health to really help address all of the mental health concerns that we were seeing from faculty and classified professionals as they were letting us know about students that they were worried about. We have to work on destigmatizing mental health help on our campus. And we see that across the country that there's a stigma associated with seeking help and asking for help. There are some things that on our campus in particular, we have to pay attention to because there's some cultural differences here. There's some cultural barriers to students seeking out, asking for help. And so recognizing that is an important part of being able to provide the services that we provide. I think we have to have a commitment from everyone on our campus that we feel comfortable asking students, how they're doing, that we have to recognize when students are struggling, that we have to recognize that we can't address mental health concerns alone, that when students tell us things and they preface things with like, I want to keep this in confidence, that there are things that we really can't. When students are hurting and struggling, we've got to get them connected to the right resources. So our mental health team and our mental health resources are incredibly important in terms of being able to help students get on a path to being successful on our campus. And it is integrated in everything that we do. I think we normalize how we ask for help in terms of making sure that on our syllabi that there's a statement about the mental health resources on our campus, so the students know that it's okay to access those resources. I know that our mental health team does a great job of going into classrooms and doing presentations and really, again, making sure that students understand what those resources are and how to access them. And again, that we have to be culturally competent in the way that we are working with our students and sensitive, making sure that we're providing trauma-informed care for our students. We know that they come oftentimes with a lot of trauma that impacts the way that they receive help and the way that they ask for help. And so it's important for us to have an understanding of that and really be sensitive to how we're providing those services to our students.
Thank you. Your next question. What are the 3 most important items you consider when making budget allocation decisions?
Yeah, so when I'm making budget allocation decisions, I think it's probably the 3 most important things are, do we have data that shows us that what we're spending our money on is making an impact? So what is our assessment piece of that? We want to prioritize money to things that are having a high impact on our students, things that are making a difference for, in particular, disproportionately impacted students. So making sure that we're putting resources in the right places to make sure that that those programs and services can best support our students who need it the most. I think it's, I often say that we want to make budget decisions. Budget decisions needs to be data informed, but not necessarily always be data driven. That we have to use data to make sure that we're understanding the impact that has on the services that we're providing, but not necessarily, we know that putting money at things doesn't always solve our problems, or doesn't necessarily move the needle for some of those students. When you put a lot of money into a program and not really have a lot of impact, and so we want to make sure that what we're doing is really impactful. And we want to be, fiduciarily responsible for with the money that we have. We again want to make sure that we're, if we're using money from grants, that we understand what the guidelines and the spending guidelines are for those. We've got a lot of money right now with HERF funds for the college, but they come with some restrictions, and we have to be thoughtful about how we're using that money. We have to be thoughtful about what happens when that money dries up. So sometimes when I'm looking at budgets, I'm also looking at longevity. How do we make sure that when we're putting money into something that it'll last? So what happens when money starts to dry out, or if they don't have enough money, how is that going to impact the program? If there are personnel attached to budgets, what does that mean if the money is gone in terms of folks and personnel? And so all of those really go into making the decisions that I make when I'm dealing with budgets. I think it's important to work closely with our budget managers to make sure that checking in and making sure that folks are understand the monies that they have, to understand how they're spending that money. Again, making sure that there's some assessment piece to the work that we're doing that justifies how we're spending our money, or validates, I think maybe justifies the wrong word, but validates that we're spending the money in the right places because it's making the most impact for our students. And ultimately, I think we have to also just always remind ourselves that at the end of the day, whatever we're spending money on needs to be to better the lives of our students that are coming to our campus. It has to be for always keeping students at the center of everything that we're doing, with an understanding that our goal is really to help students succeed on our campus. And so all of our programs and services that are utilizing state funds and federal funds should be geared towards helping our students succeed.
Thank you. Your next question. Students have traditionally had a hard time navigating systems stemmed in white supremacy, especially first generation, Black and Brown students. How have you helped students combat bureaucracies within the educational system?
Yeah, as I mentioned earlier, I have a strong commitment, personal commitment to social justice and equity in all the work that I do. As a Latino male, Puerto Rican male in California, growing up in the Midwest has absolutely shaped the way that I see myself. I look at our students and I often see myself in many of our students as a first-gen student coming to campus and not really understanding how things work. I didn't have the luxury of having my parents be able to explain to me how to complete a FAFSA or how to access a resource or how to ask for help, because oftentimes in my community, asking for help was not something that we did. And so I had to learn how to do that. And that has shaped how I've maneuvered my professional career. I am committed and have always been committed to making sure that we're eliminating barriers where we can, that we're looking at things that impact disproportionately students who maybe are, have been marginalized and not have had access to resources, or who oftentimes fall through the cracks because of some of the barriers that, and sometimes those barriers are put in place because that's what they're meant to do. And sometimes those barriers are there and folks don't even realize that they're setting up a barrier for our students. And I can think of a couple of examples of things that we've done or that I've done to help address some of those barriers. When we look at our scholarship program, for instance, one of the things with working with Sylvia, our scholarship coordinator, really looking at how we promoted our scholarships, where we promoted scholarships, looking at criteria associated with certain scholarships. One of the things that we did was we went back to talk to some of our donors about some of the criteria that they had in place for some of our scholarships that were really, the donor thought that they were setting up money or scholarships to be able to aid students, and they specifically say, like, I want to help some of your most disproportionately impacted students or most marginalized students, but the criteria that they had really didn't lend itself to that. There were unit barriers. They had put things in place like saying that some of these funds could only be used, for instance, to be able to pay for books and fees. We know that a lot of our students are parts of some of our categorical programs that already cover some of that. If they're part of the Promise program, they already have their fees covered. They have books. A lot of our students are eligible for Pell grants, so they get a Pell book grant, and so they're able to utilize other resources. So what would often happen is they would get awarded a scholarship and then not be able to use it. And so we work to work with donors to be able to cut down on those barriers and allow students to really access the funds that they needed. I think another example that I can give is our conduct process. When I started here at City, one of the things that I often would tell students is that our conduct process is an educational process, but not meant to be punitive. But I realized that a lot of the words that we had in our conduct letters that we were sending to students were filled with words that often were charged. And for students that were coming from justice impacted backgrounds, they would look at the letter and probably feel very differently about what they thought they were walking into in a meeting with the Dean of Student Affairs, that it was not necessarily something that was going to be educational, but really was set up to be something more punitive. So I've worked to change letters. I've worked with our Deans of Student Affairs across the district over the last several years to rework our letters that we're sending. We look at our processes. We've made some changes to the way that our letters read and to our processes, and I continue to be committed to working on that for our students. I can tell you all that as the Acting Vice President of Student Services, currently, I've looked at funding resources that I now have access to that I didn't have access to before. So like through equity and being able to really think about, are we utilizing our equity monies and dollars to really support the programs that are designed to have the highest impact for our Black and Brown students. And so we've made commitments this year to give money upfront to some of those programs so that they don't have to come back every year asking for funds. We've worked to get a student services tech position approved for our Student Success Equity Center. I mean, that's something that's going to hopefully have an impact on our Black and Brown students, because those are the students that are accessing that resource center. So I think I've done a lot of different things. I continue to, in my role, to look at how we can do that better and how we can continue to support the programs that are doing the work. Working with our categorical programs, and supporting, making connections to like our Hunger Action Days with EOPS and CalWorks has been an example, our diaper program that we've done. So just really thinking holistically about all of the things that we're doing, how they have an impact on Black and Brown students, and then how we can best support that, either through funding or promotion of programs and getting the word out. So I would say those are some of the things that I've done.
Thank you. And you have about 25 minutes left in your forum.
Thank you.
Your next question: how would you work with student services and instructional services to increase enrollment, retention, and completion?
Yeah, so this is a big task, as I started earlier, identifying that enrollment is one of the challenges that our campuses are facing these days. And so we have to look at enrollment and retention as something that all of us are committed to be engaged in. This is not something that's going to be solved by instruction or just by student services. There has to be some synergy between both of those to really look at some of the things that we have in place, some of the practices that we have to be able to really support and increase our enrollment, but then also to support the retention of our students that we currently have. We know that for the majority of our students at City, not a lot of them are really taking full load, 15 units or 12 units, that most of our students are taking 3 units or 6. And so we've got to find ways to get more of our students connected to being able to take more classes. But we also know that our students work and they have other priorities. So we have to think about the ways that student services and academics can work together, instructional services can work together to really be able to support students in that way. And thinking about things like, how do we get our Black and Brown students, for instance, to feel more connected to our campus? We know that we have an incredibly diverse student population, and that our students, as I mentioned before, often comes with different barriers. And so we've got to work to help address those. We've got to work to help our students feel like the services that they're seeking are here on our campus, that we're prepared and engaged and ready to help them. Our students have really struggled during this pandemic. And this is not about saying that we need to have, be really fully reopened and we need to have all of our services back to, 40 hours a week and things like that. This is really about how do we serve all of our students in a way that makes them feel valued, that makes them feel heard, that makes them feel like they're a part of a community that cares, that for our students who don't have access to technology, that they can get access to services. So like our library that's open now, that's a way for us to partner with instruction and student services to think about how do we market that to students so that they know that they have a place to come on campus and study. That they now have a place on campus that they can come to do some work, and where maybe while their kids are now back in school, that they can do that. We have so many students who are relying on the public library or other public places for Wi-Fi, and when we shut down, that access went away. And so being able to partner with our instructional side to be able to say, how do we reconnect students with that? tutoring? How do we reconnect students with our tutoring centers and get them access to being able to ask for help again, being able to come on campus and meet with a tutor and not just over Zoom for some of our students who need to sit with someone, being able to do that. So there's a lot of opportunities for us to do that. It does mean that we all, again, have to work at it together. There's got to be a willingness to look at enrollment and retention in a way that that allows all of us to think creatively about how we re-engage with students. Our outreach efforts in the high schools, we've done a great job, and I'd say we, Genevieve, you're part of that, have done a great job in your team with being able to really increase the number of students that are taking courses before they come to City. And then we've got to do now the next step, which is get those students now, once they graduate, enrolled here at City College. I mean, they already have college credits here on our campus, and we've got to figure out a way to do that better. That we know that our students have choices when they graduate, and we want to be able to present to students that this is the best choice for them, that City has everything that they're looking for, that it's affordable. I mean, where else can you go with $46 a unit, and take classes and earn an associate's degree and then transfer to, the UC or the CSU of your choice. And so those opportunities are all here. We've got great programs that can help students set up success and on those paths for students that want to transfer. And so we've got some work to do there. But I think that we've got all the right tools and we've got the right people in place to really be able to lead our retention and recruitment efforts.
Thank you. And your final question: student services, faculty, and staff work with all San Diego City College students and have a unique perspective. How will you ensure their voices are heard in the decision-making process?
Could you ask that question one more time? I'm sorry, I got some feedback.
Sure. Student services, faculty, and staff work with all San Diego City College students and have a unique perspective. How will you ensure their voices are heard in the decision-making process?
Yeah, shared governance at the college is probably one of the most important things that we have in place. That we know that students, faculty, classified professionals all have a voice in how the college is run. There's also a voice in how we do things and our efforts that we're embarking upon. As I just mentioned about enrollment and retention, everybody has a say and a voice in how we can do that. We've got to come together. We know that folks have an opportunity to be engaged in different aspects of the college through either committee representation, through forums, through focus groups that happen at the campus. But there's really an opportunity for folks to be able to share their voice, to share their knowledge. We know that as people on our campus are connecting with students or reconnecting with students now, as we're transitioning back to campus, that we're learning a lot about what our students need. We're also learning about the things that have worked well during this pandemic, right? I think this pandemic has allowed us an opportunity to really look at some of the gaps that we had before, in terms of being able to provide remote opportunities for students. And I remember there was a time where we were like, no, students need to see us in person, and we don't really want to do a lot of remote things. And now we're in a space where we're like, oh, this remote thing kind of worked, right? And so I think it's important for folks to be able to come back and share those things, to be able to talk about what worked, what didn't work, how might we expand some things as we open up, how might we keep some of the things that we've done remotely that are working for our students. We also know, a recent survey says that a lot of our students who are working loved working in the way that our remote services were operating, because it gave them an opportunity to connect with folks while they were still at work on their break, or while their kids were at home. And so I think one of the beauty of this kind of shared governance process is that we get to bring all of those voices to the table. We get to really talk about what's working. We get to look at assessment of all of our efforts and really use that data and information to set forth how we want to move forward. And again, looking at how our programs are structured, what kinds of activities we do, how we are we listening to all of our students. One of the things that I often will share with our student government as one of the advisors to Associated Student Governments in my role as Dean of Student Affairs was that we would say to students, or I would say to students, that they have to remember who's not at the table. That oftentimes when we're sitting at a table, we're making decisions where it's easy to get caught up in what I want or what I think people want, but not really go out there and ask and really listen to the voices that are not at the table telling us what's missing. That we've got to be active in the way that we do that. We have to go out and really seek input from folks that are not at these tables making decisions, because whatever decisions we make impact them. I mean, those are the folks that are doing the work. Those are the students that are going to be impacted by whatever program we're funding or not funding. And so it's important to keep that in mind when we're coming together, that all of the voices matter, that we've got things to learn from even folks that we sometimes see as detractors, that there are lessons to be learned in all of that. If we just listen, and sometimes listen with our heart as well as our head, because I think that will help us go a long way.
Thank you. At this time, I'd like to invite you to make your closing remarks.
Well, first of all, that went by really fast. Hopefully I was able to answer all the questions that you all had or wanted to hear. I think, I think it's important for me to just say that City College is my home. The folks here are my family. When I left UCSD and came to San Diego City College, and lots of folks have probably heard me share this story before. I feel like I spent a lot of time at UCSD talking about access, but I get to practice what access looks like every single day here at City College. And I loved my time at UCSD. I felt like it was a great place for me to kind of grow up and get my wings, and I was prepared to do the work that I've been doing. And I came to City and I found a place where I can put some of those things into practice. And I also get to expand on those. I get to work with students who look like me and have had experiences like me, students that have struggled with food insecurity the way that I struggled with food insecurity when growing up. My family didn't have a lot of resources. Again, I didn't understand what going to college was like. I think about, I've shared with folks that I was part of the Upper Bound program in high school, and I credit that program with the reason that I went to college. They helped me fill out applications. They helped me complete my FAFSA, things that my parents couldn't do. And I see that in the work that I do every single day. I'm committed to continuing to do that work. I'm committed to working, with social justice and equity in all of our practices, in all of our services, looking at how I can support student services. Leading through a pandemic has been incredibly tough. This has not been, anyone that tells you that to take a job during a pandemic, I would tell you to rethink that. It has been an absolute joy in terms of the learning that I've had, but it has been hard. I would not lie and tell anyone that has been easy. But the things that continue to keep me going are that I know that I'm working with folks that are committed to serving all of our students. That I am surrounded by a team of people that are committed to social justice, that folks that are committed to serving our students in the best way that they can. I've certainly learned a lot and continue to grow as a professional in this role. And I'm ready and confident to continue to lead student services and work hand in hand with my team to support all of our students and to support all of the folks that are working in student services, and to partner with our instructional team to really lead the best college that we can. I'm proud of the things that we have accomplished in student services during this pandemic. I know that we've got a long way to go as we look to reopening in the spring. And I just say, I thank you all for giving me the opportunity to potentially continue to lead the Student Services Unit here at San Diego City College. It is, again, it is my home. You all are my family, and I just thank you all for allowing me this opportunity to interview today.
Thank you, Mr. Perez, and thank you all joining on YouTube for joining us in this forum. Once again, your feedback is very important. To submit your feedback for Mr. Marciano Perez, please go to the survey link that will be displayed on the screen. Again, all electronic surveys for this candidate must be completed by 3 p.m. today. So please complete the brief survey right away. Again, this survey will close today at 3 p.m. College leadership will be reviewing all of the comments submitted today as part of their deliberations. Thank you again, Mr. Perez, and thank you again all for joining us on this forum.
Thank you.